And perfect. So you each would have received a Logon. If you have not received your Logon, please talk to your Wushka coordinator for your school. Otherwise, email the support team and we'll be able to help you activate this. Otherwise, once you do have it, just click on the Logon, either the Wushka AU page or the Wushka NZ, put in your login details, and it will sign you on. As you can see on my screen, I've got the Wushka program coordinator and the teacher dashboard. Those of you who aren't a coordinator won't be able to see both of these. You'll just have teacher dashboard. So just make sure you click on that and it will bring up these colored tiles. Today we're going to be focusing on manage class list, manage reading groups, student log-on, I'll show you at the very end, and helpful resources. I'm going to first enter the reading boxes. The purpose for this is because this is where you would start your beginning of your planning. So I'm going to show you now. Wushka is made up of 15 book boxes, right through from magenta level 1 all the way through to black 31++. If you click on the top right hand plus, it will expand the box and show you all of the books within that level. The reason that you would start here is because you've got the filter option up the top right hand corner. So if you were wanting to continue your inquiry topic, say you were focusing on space for term 2, you'd be able to select the theme by going down, scrolling through, finding space, and clicking filter results. That would bring up all of the space related books and each level. It would just save you time. Once you want to hop out, you just click the reset button. Also in filter, we've got the fiction and non-fiction option. So later on, you'll be given statistics to see whether your students are just focusing on fiction or non-fiction, and you'll be able to allocate them one or the other just to make sure that they're exposed to a range of different text. The best part about the filter is the comprehension strategy. So if you had a learning intention that you wanted to focus on for your students, you'll be able to find that in here. So I'm just going to click on compare and contrast and show you how to filter again. So select and then filter results, and then it will show all of the compare and contrast filters within each of the levels. And to hop out, I just click reset. So those are the book boxes. As you can see, some of the books I've already read, and it will say this in grey at the top right hand corner, and it will say how many times I've read the book. That doesn't mean that I can't choose it again. It's just an indicator for you to know. I'm going to go back to my dashboard. And now I'm going to go into manage class list. So here I've got a table, and you'll be able to see this, but at the moment, for those of you who have not logged on, there won't be any information. So it may say a temporary password or that the reading level is not set. This is the most important part for you to get your students up and running. So it will show their first name, their surname, their username. The username you cannot change. When they first log on, they can use lowercase letters followed by the rest of the username. Because they're on their own device, they can save their username and password, making it easier and faster for them to log on, particularly for those younger students. The password, a lot of you will have when you go on a temporary password. To change this, you'll go up to Manage Class, Set Class Password, and enter the password that you would like for your class. You may like to have your room, say room 2, you could put 123 or Wushka. It's completely up to you. If you would like them to have an individual password, you can click on the blue dotted line and enter in individually what that student's password would be. The tick in the red box is like a save button. Once you've clicked it, it will save those results for you. The reading level. So for those of you who want to continue an independent reading program, this is where you'll set this up. So say my student, Deborah, is reading at level 9, so blue level 9, I would obviously set her independent reading level to 1 below. So I'd select yellow level 6 to 8 and click the tick in the red box. For her level access, I'm going to select her reading level and 1 below. So this will give yellow 6 and 1 below. If you wanted to offer more reading material for independent readers, you can select levels below reading level only. This will pop up all books below yellow. If you're wanting to filter how many books they are reading independently, I would suggest sticking to reading level and 1 level below and clicking the tick. If you're wanting to have your guided reading group, this is where you're going to set those up. So for those of you just setting up and logging on, you'll go up to Manage Class, Create Reading Group, and enter the name of your reading groups that you had at school. You'll continue the same group names and levels that you had initially. So you may have a group called Tigers. Obviously you already got a reading group called Tigers, but each time that you create a group, you would enter in the name and click Create Group, and it would save automatically. So you would firstly go on and do this for each of your groups, following those steps. Then to allocate that group and a student within it, for Deborah, I'm going to click on the blue dotted line, the down arrow, and then I'm going to select whatever group she is in. So for example, I'm going to choose Tigers and click the Save button. Now the reading group permissions is the most important part for you. The reason being is it depends on what you're wanting to focus your reading for Wushka on. So if you are wanting to do independent reading, you would have the reading permissions on. For example, if you were going to have your parents continuing a guided reading program, you'd want to keep the guided reading program permission on so that the parent and student are able to access the guided reading books that you have allocated. You would need to be specific and say that they are only to read this with a parent, a caregiver, or an older sibling, because it needs to be an unseen text, as we know. This will be specific to them when they log on. They'll know that it's their guided reading group because it will say reading group and the name such as Tigers. And I'll show you this when we log on to student logon. If you as the teacher are going to be continuing guided reading on a platform such as Zoom or Google Classrooms, how you would do this is you would set up your groups, but you would make the reading group permission off. Say you emailed your students the Zoom link for their guided reading session and it were to start at 1 p.m. today. You would keep the reading group permissions off until it came to 12:55, 5 minutes before the reading group was about to start, and then you would change the permissions to on. That student and the students within that group would then be able to access the guided reading. And this would ensure that it remained an unseen text. When you finish that group and reading with that group, you would go back into Manage Class Lists, open up the reading group permissions and select off to ensure that they don't read each of the texts for the week, because I imagine if you were to continue a guided reading program, you would allocate 5 books for the week, Monday to Friday. Also with books, you can have narration. So you can turn this on or off for the whole class, or you can do it individually. For the whole class, you go up to Manage Class, Set Class Narration, and yes means that it will be on for the whole class, no means that it will be switched off for the whole class. Later on, when I show you the statistics, you'll be able to see if a student is purely reading, only listening to narration. Although that's great for oral language, they need to be doing a range of listening for oral language and reading. So if that student is only listening to narration, you can individually click on the blue dotted line and select no and the tick to make sure that that student has no access to the narration, because we want to boost their reading ability. Quizzes. So at the end of each book, there'll be a comprehension quiz, and I am going to show you what a book looks like after this, and how these options will all pop up as you are reading. So the quizzes are based on comprehension questions such as inferencing, literal, and evaluative questions. You can turn this on or off for the whole class, again by selecting Manage Class, Set Class Quizzes, and there'll be 5 different options there for you. I suggest that in our remote learning environment, you select compulsory. But again, if you do not want your students to continue doing the comprehension question at the end, you can turn it off individually for them, making it optional. It's completely up to you. If you have a student come through partway through the year, you can easily add them just by typing in their name and click Add Student. They'll pop up on the side, and as you can see, it will be what you initially will see when you log on and see your class. It's got a temp password and nothing is set, so you'll just have to set that up for them. I'm going to go back and quickly show you a book just so you can see all of those different things that I spoke about. So I'm going into the reading boxes. Wait for it to load. And I'm going to open up this book. So when you open up a book, it will give you a brief description of what the book is about, and then it will provide some more detail. Students won't be able to see this box. It's for you to help support your planning. So you'll have in here phonics, content words, and different information about the book that will help you with your planning and what you want to focus on. There's a follow-up activity. Down the left-hand side, it will have the level, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, the theme, different skills that are learnt. More importantly, for the lower levels, it has the high frequency words included, which is great if you're wanting to plan for a high frequency word of the week, such as the, this, We've also got support materials. Now, students do not have access to any of these support materials. The reason being is because you need to allocate them to the student. So these are printable resources. If you would like to make them digitalized, you can download Showbie or Explain Everything and get the students to open up these printable worksheets in those 2 apps or one of the other, and it will digitalize it, meaning that they can work straight on that worksheet and then email it back to you after if you would like to see it. So we've got the follow-up activity, which is the Black Line Master. We also have the lesson plan. So you might like to have this open whilst you're carrying out your guided reading session. It's great as it will just talk about how you can introduce a text, what questions you can focus on what page, some follow-up activities, and some materials and skills and strategies that you might like to focus on as well. We've got a printable reader and a printable wordless reader. Now, these were originally made to be printed out as a book, so some of the text is upside down, but I'm thinking you could use a snipping tool and crop some of those pages and then flip them if you wanted students to work on it, particularly the wordless printable reader if you're wanting a student to focus on sequencing and maybe write down the beginning, middle, and end of the book. There's also word cards. On the higher levels, there will be different activities, and in some of the books, there will be a running record information sheet because you can continue your assessment remotely, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to open up a book now, but before I do that, to bookmark a book, say if you decide you would like to have this for your planning for next week when you're choosing your books for your group, just click bookmark and it will show up in my bookmarks as well as when you're choosing your books for your reading groups, and I'll show you that once we enter the reading groups. To open a book, you just click the play button And this looks exactly the same for students as it does for you. Up the top right-hand corner is where you can play the narration. I'm not going to do that today as the audio through Zoom isn't fantastic, but it will be for you when students are opening up and listening through their own devices. To open the book, you just click the arrow and they can go through. So if you're doing a guided reading session and you set out a meeting to your group of students, they would all log on to Wushka. They would all go to their reading box because you would have allowed the permission to be on. They'll open up the book that you've instructed them to open, and then you can make sure that they are on mute, and then you can say, Johnny, can you please read page 4? And then he would read, and then he would mute himself again. It's just the same as if you were doing a guided reading session at the mat or in your half circle table at school. Once they've completed the book, they click the blue cross. They'll then be asked if they would like to complete the quiz for the school reader. Now remember I showed you in the manage class functions that you can turn this on or off for the whole class or individually. I'm going to select yes just to show you. Get started, and here are the 5 questions. So the questions will vary from, as I said, inferential, literal, and evaluative. At the end, they'll be given their results. If they are unhappy, it does not mean that they cannot go back and reread the book. We support rereading for comprehension, so if they want to, they can go back and reread it again and try and get a better comprehension result. You'll also be told if they have reread the book, which is fantastic. I'm going to go back to my dashboard and I'm going to go into the tile Manage Reading Groups. Down the left-hand side, I've got all of the different levels. When I select one of these, the books will show in this box here. So for example, if I select yellow, all of the yellow books are going to pop up. Now I need to think, what's group am I choosing books for? Okay, I've got dolphins and they're yellow, so I'm going to click on them. And you know that you're selecting yellow books for dolphins because both are highlighted. Down the right-hand side, it will show the students who are within the group. Currently, as you can see, they've already got some readers selected for their guided reading. But if I wanted to choose some more, I can look down this side and I can click the plus and it will remove the book from this side. And as you can see, it's brought it over to their book box for guided reading. If I decide I don't want that book, I cross it and it will disappear, going back into the leveled readers. If you can't remember what a book's about, or you want to just a quick snapshot, click on the magnifying glass and it will just bring up some quick information for you to scan your eyes over to decide if you would like to have that for your planning. As I said earlier, when you bookmark a book, you'll know because it will show up with a yellow star. So that's just a quick reminder that, oh, I've already looked at that book and I wanted to have that for that particular group. If a student has read a book before or it's been in their group, you can archive it. So it will pop back over and it will show the folder on the other side. It's going to click that and show you. And it will, the little folder will show up much like this one, and it will have that with a plus. So it means that group's read that book before, and I know because it's got the archive folder with a plus. Now that doesn't mean that they can't reread that one again. I just click on the folder and it will jump back into their book box. If you're setting up guided reading for your group and you're going to be getting your parents to run it, so you only want to choose 5 books for the week, or even for yourself if you're running your guided reading session, a quick way instead of Xing each of the books is to go up to the tool icon and click Archive All Books. When you click Submit, they'll empty. It's just a faster way for you. The reason I can see different rooms is because I'm the coordinator. So if you are a teacher, you'll only see your room unless you are working in 2 different rooms. Maybe you're an ESOL teacher or a reading recovery teacher. You might be in several different rooms, so you'll have different tabs up the top there. I'm going to show you student statistics now. So student statistics is a great overview. I'm just going to select a student where I do have some data for you to show. Oh, they've got no readers. Let me see. Here we go. All right, so new versus reread. So this will tell you if a student has reread a book, which is fantastic because we encourage rereading for comprehension. Read versus unread, this is just the percentage of how many books they have read that have been allocated to them. Fiction and non-fiction, we want them to have a range of different text. So as I said before, you can filter the results when you're choosing your books to allocate more non-fiction or more fiction. Narration versus no narration. This is where I said you'll be able to tell if a child is purely just having narration on, so you'll know whether to turn that function off. If you scroll down to the bottom and click on See All Quiz Results, it will give you some fantastic data. The reason being is that it will say what time a student is reading. So Hector's reading at 10:38 p.m. and you can see that some of his results for his books aren't fantastic for his comprehension. So you might need to have a conversation with the parent there or look at the level that he's reading. You can go a bit further by clicking the View button and it will open up the questions showing you which ones they got right or wrong, and that might be a focus for you. You can also go into class statistics. Just as a brief snapshot, again, this is just a component of our reading program, but it is great for you to see. So it just says here, Faye, how many readers they've completed, how long the average reader is open for, so you'll know if they're just quickly flicking through the pages. And it says how many readers they've read and their average quiz result. So obviously with her, I might have a look at testing her and doing a running record and moving her up a level as her comprehension's at 84. But Hector, as I said, he's only got his book open for 25 seconds. He's reading at 10:38 at night and his comprehension is quite low. I'm going to go into my dashboard and helpful resources. So here we've got our resources for program coordinator, the teacher user guide, the reading level correlation chart, support materials for reading. So if you want to continue to do your running records, open this up, scroll down. You all know how to do a running record, I'm sure, but if you'd like to know what books you are able to do a running record with, this will tell you what level and what book you can choose. So it's great because you'll still be able to report back to parents later in the year and there won't be a gap. It's also got the literacy progress markers, so you can also mark students off against this as well. You also have your leaflets for parents and information that you can post to social media sites if you're using those to collaborate with your students and parents. For their user logon details, you might like to send the letter home with them. To generate their login, you go back to my dashboard, manage class list. You have to make sure this whole table is completed before you send this home, otherwise they'll be able to access every level in every book, which you don't want. You go out to manage class list, generate student letters. Now you can use the snipping tool because you don't want to send this home to every student for privacy reasons. So a snipping tool is like cropping, and you'd be able to just crop those details, send it home with the supporting letter that you find in helpful resources, and then the students will be able to get started. I've also got the student logon, which I'm just going to show you quickly. So we're getting close to the end of time here. All right, so once I click on one of my students, it will automatically log me out and log in as a student. So if you want to go back to your dashboard, you'll just have to log back in. I'm going to enter into Hector's login. And as you can see, it's got his independent reading here. Now his reading permission for his guided reading is currently switched off, so I cannot see that at the moment. If I wanted to have him being able to see this, I'd turn the permission on, as I discussed earlier. So if he wants to expand his independent reading book box, he clicks on the plus and it will open up all of those books for him. Again, when he opens the book, it's the same. There are just a few details that he won't see. So it will give a brief description of the book, a follow-up activity, some other books that he might like to read after if he enjoyed this one, and his reading level. As I said before, they won't have access to the support materials. You'll have to download those and email them out to your students. If he likes this book, he can favorite it just by clicking on the favorites button, and it will automatically add down to his favorites box, which he can access at all times. When he opens the book, it's exactly the same as what you would be able to see when you open your book. When he clicks on my page, it will bring up his results. So nothing's a secret. We want students to know where they are in their learning and how they're going to move forward. So he'll be able to see all of the information, including his quiz results and what time he's been reading. I'll click on the favorites box and it will show his favorites book box just there. If he decides I don't like that book anymore, I can click remove and it will remove that book. Click the back button. So now I want to hop out of Hector's Logon. So I'm just going to log out and it will bring you back to the main Wushka page where I can log back in again. All right. I'm going to have a look now at the chat box. So if you've got any questions or you want me to go over something again, please let me know and I can show you again. So Brendan, with the printable document being digitalized, I've had some schools even down or open it in a Google Doc. They've said that the format does change slightly, but you are able to still work directly onto the document without having to print it. It's just for those students who don't have access to a printer, and just with the current situation, having access to ink and buying paper, it's quite expensive, so it might be easier for them to digitalize it, enter the information, particularly older students, if you're wanting to have a look at their worksheets once they're completed. Yes, so they have a guided reading book box and an independent reading book box. So to be sure that they don't go ahead and read the books that you want to have for guided reading, you'll manage their functions and permissions. So I'm going to show you that again by going into Manage Class List. And for example, I've got Faye. Her independent reading level and the books that I want her to access are blue. I want her to have her reading level and one below only. She's in the Dolphins group. Her reading permission I want on if the parent is going to be doing the reading. If I, the teacher, am going to be doing the guided reading, I will change this to off until the time comes for that guided reading group to have their session with me. For purposes of showing you what it looks like when a student enters and the permission is on, I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to go to the reading groups. I'm going to just quickly select some books. And I'm going to log on to the student. And as you can see, it's popped up with reading group Dolphins. So if I was doing a Zoom session and it was coming up, say now we're going to have our session, I'd say, all right, everyone, can you open up your Up in Space book? and we'd be able to access that by opening it up. And you would be looking at the same book as well as the students, and you can flick between your lesson plan and the book to help you run that session. Once it's over, I'll just log out of the student log on. Once I've completed that guided reading session, I'll go back to Manage Class List. I'll go back to Faye Brewer and the Dolphins guided reading group, and I will change that permission to off. So now when I go into Student Log On and select Faye Brewer, she does not have the reading group Dolphins showing anymore because we only want that as unseen text. Again, if your parents are going to be carrying out the guided reading, you will have to just have a chat to them about only letting their child read the book with a parent, caregiver, or an older student in that particular book box, because you'd leave the function on because we wouldn't know when the parent was going to read that book with their child. Obviously, because we're working remotely, things are a little bit different and parents still have to work, so we're not sure when they'll get that reading in. But in saying that, we want them to be reading at a sufficient time, at a good time when students are refreshed and ready for reading, not at 10:38 at night like Hector was. To add new students in bulk, Michelle, you'll need to talk to your coordinator. The best way of doing it is getting an Excel document, which your coordinator will have. They would have been sent this by the Wushka team. Once you've filled out the bulk amount of students with their surname and first name, you'll send that to your coordinator and they'll be able to upload it quickly for you. Coordinators, if you are out there and you're listening, feel free to email the support@wushka.com.au team or your rep that you've been dealing with, and we can easily do this for you if you do have a bulk range of students that you do need to sign up to Wushka quickly. No, so students, parents can't see other students in the same or different reading levels. That's purely for privacy reasons. Obviously, they would know if they had another student in their reading group, if they were doing a live session or through discussion. But currently, it's not displayed. It's not like where you go into your classroom and it will have your reading groups with all of your students within that reading group and their level. It is quite private. So the only way they would know is if they had a session with you and another child was in it. That's how they would know, or unless you published it on a site or somewhere for them to see. So Catherine, in a class with a job share arrangement, is it best for the two teachers to use the same login, or is it possible to have two teacher logins for the same class? So depending on who set up your account, I imagine each of you would have been given a separate login, but you're accessing the same class. So you'll log on with your logon details, your username and password. You'll both see the same students, you'll both see all of your different groups. The only time that you would need to discuss and collaborate with that teacher when it comes to Wushka is when you are going to run your guided reading groups, because it's just like in person, you can't be in two places at one time. So if I was running a guided reading session at 12 o'clock and you were wanting to run a guided reading session at 12 o'clock with the same group, it wouldn't work. Yeah, so you just have to discuss who's having what group and what times you're going to be going on. That doesn't mean to say that you can't both log on at 12 o'clock and take different groups. It was just if you were doing the same group, but I imagine that you would be assigned different ones and collaborating. So it's the same if you've got a learning assistant or an ESOL teacher. They can also be added to your class. If you used to have that when you were in the classroom and they were supporting you with groups, they can have their separate logon, be added to your class and be able to set up and manage their own groups within that. But you'll just have to collaborate with them as to what time that they were going to be running their session. Yeah, so you can control the number of books they read in independent reading by selecting just one level below. There is another way of doing it. I just don't want to confuse you, but I will show you quickly. Just log on. So if I were to go into Manage Class List up the top, create reading group, I could create an independent reading group for dolphins and create that group. So say I've got my guided reading session with dolphins, which Faye is in. I've got that coming up at the moment. So I'm going to make sure she's in dolphins and turn that permission on. We've just finished our session and I want her to have access to all of her independent books that are now in her dolphins independent book box. So now I'm going to go to independent reading dolphins and click make sure that the permission is on. So to allocate books for this independent reading dolphins group, I'd go to reading groups. I'd select independent reading dolphins and I can select what books I want for that group. So again, it just comes down to the permissions back in my dashboard, manage class list. So instead of flicking the guided reading permission on and off, you can just flick their groups between that they're in, just making sure that their guided reading one is off unless you're starting that session. I hope that makes sense. Can I clarify on how to get group chat notes and a copy of this PD? So if you'd like a copy of this video and to get a copy of the notes, email, I'll write it in, support@wushka.com.au, and just send them your name, the name of your school, and they'll have your email and they'll send it out to you straight away. If you wanted to take a copy of this chat at the moment, just scroll down on your chat at the, that you currently have open, and you'll see those 3 dots in the right hand corner. If you click those and click save chat before you exit the room, it will automatically save to your computer for you. But if you don't want to do that and you just want it to be emailed to you as a bulk with the video and the chat, just email support@wushka.com.au after this session and they'll get it out to you. If you are still confused about how you can allocate just a smaller amount of independent reading books, feel free to email your rep or support@wushka.com.au to maybe have just a separate session, maybe one-on-one with your rep, and they can show you how to do that if you are still confused. Hopefully what I showed you today about creating 2 different groups will make sense to you, and the fact that if Faye's in dolphins for guided reading, she would need an independent dolphins reading group as well, and then you would just flick between the 2. So when it's not a guided reading session, you would leave the reading group as independent reading dolphins, but when it is a guided reading session, you would just have to make sure that you put it into that dolphins guided reading session, and then that will change the amount of books that they're able to access. Oh, thank you everyone for joining. I'm glad that you got a lot from it. Sorry about the hiccup at the beginning with sharing screens. I'm rusting from using Microsoft Teams and then jumping to Zoom. So Louise just said, Joanne, also ensure level access is set to reading groups only. Our pleasure, Shannon. All right, well, that's it for today. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Just quickly, if you haven't seen, we've got ST Math, which is another great remote learning resource that I'd highly recommend that you check out if you haven't got anything set up for math. But again, if you do need any support, just yell out, let us know. We're here to help you. We want you to be up and running and feel supported with Wushka. Just quickly, sorry, we are currently using Google Classrooms. Have we used this in the platform? No, but I do know of other teachers who have, and it does work. Yeah, so as Louise is backing me up, she also knows some teachers in schools that are using Google Classroom. It depends on the platform, how you would use it, if you are needing to pre-record the session or do it live. I haven't personally used Google Classrooms, so I'm not sure if it's a live interactive meeting such as like we're doing now through Zoom, or if you pre-record and upload. I'd suggest if you were doing guided reading that you might like to just set up some meetings, but trial both. It is a big learning curve for everyone. It sure is. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. It was great talking to all of you. I'm glad you got a lot out of it. And please, again, if you do get stuck, you need another session, just let us know. We're here to help you. All right.